Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. In today's review, I'm going to be taking a look at the Takara Tomy Transformers Generation Selects Seacons Lobclaw, also known as Nautilator. Here we have the Selects packaging with the standard schematic image of Lobclaw/Nautilator in his robot mode, as well as in his lobster alt form. We turn to the side of the packaging, we've got the Transformers Generation Selects logo, and then once again, much like we saw with Sea-Wing, we do have the Decepticon insignia, as well as other legal information. And here we have Nautilator out of his packaging, and as he comes packaged in his lobster mode. Now this by far, to me, is one of the strongest in terms of his sea creature alt form. This really does look very, very cool. I love the elongated tail section that is in fact made out of his weapon for the robot mode. I also like how he's got these small legs on either side. He does have approximately 8, and then at the front he does in fact have pincers, which are in fact articulated due to the wrist articulation for transformation. A really nice looking head sculpt as well, with that very similar yellow paint apps that we've seen on some of the other Seacons. We've also got that aquamarine blue green tint going on for the figure as well. I love the red paint applications within the mouth as well, with the silver paint apps for the pincer like teeth. Super cool looking vehicle mode for this particular character. And as we turn our attention down to the tail, this too has also got some nice scaly reptilian type of detailing, which is really cool with the fin at the back. This does convert into a weapon for him in robot mode. If I had one criticism with this figure within this mode, it would be that the fact that these legs really don't like locking in. They're supposed to sit in this slight groove, and this one does stay in reasonably well. However, this one, there is just some clearance issue, or perhaps some QC issue, that just prevents it from being pushed all the way in. And even if I do get it tabbed in, it will spring out of place. It's almost as if though the plastic is warped, which is a slight shame. And I also don't think that the tolerances on these legs too are that tight, as when you do plonk the figure down, this one in particular consistently just wants to collapse. So you really have to rest him on both of his claws. That could just be an isolated issue to my figure, but that is definitely something to be wary of. In this mode, his mouth can open and close, so you can have it completely opened or shut if you so desired. If you disengage these tabs, you can get the head to look up and down. The arms are on ball joints and hinge joints, so you can really and truly maneuver these in whatever way you so choose, and then maneuver the upper arm on its own individual ball joint. We saw earlier that these here are on hinge joints, however they are supposed to be solidified for this particular mode. And then finally, there is only really a swivel at the tail if you count where it ports into the lobster alt form. Now, bringing in some of Nautilator's accessories, he of course comes with the combiner hand. This once again can double as a hand, or can be the back ankle spur for when we get him in combined mode. He also comes with a larger, darker blaster, which I do imagine is probably for the Piranacon combined mode, so that is also quite cool to see. And then finally, he also comes with an axe, which is done in that same really nice pink metallic paint apps that we've seen on some of the other Seacons, and this plugs into form part of the trident for the King Poseidon combiner. So definitely a really cool figure. In terms of weapon storage, you do have to plug these under the underside, so the axe goes on the underbelly of the alt form. And here for the hand, you can simply just port this into this peg here, and then peg this into the back and have the hand situated down. Personally, I think that the hands are quite clunky. They don't really have a nice display option for vehicle mode, so I tend to just set them off to the sides. But if you do wish to have him in a more armoured up manner, much like something we would see perhaps from an Aquaman movie, then you can definitely have him have this type of look. And I think that he does look quite cool. In terms of a Seacon comparison, just setting him up so that he looks rather cool in this configuration, opening the jaw, we can then bring out our Select Seacon Golf, also known as Scalor. We can also bring in the recently reviewed Sea-Wing, which too is also a deluxe class figure. So let's just see if I can get all of these figures in the same shot. And then finally, we can bring in the big boy Turtler. And you can see here that the Seacons are definitely coming together incredibly nicely, and I just love the colour coordination. Scalor, to me, is definitely the more drastically different colour. He's more blue than any of the other figures, which is accurate to his on-screen art. But I really do like the overall look of these Seacons. Very distinctive characters, and personally for me, I think that they look great in all of their modes. But when you have them fully transformed into their combined figurations, that's where I really think these figures shine. Now, in terms of transformation, it is rather straightforward. First of all, if you haven't already, you're going to want to remove all of the additional accessories. We can then come to the back and disengage this piece, and if you wish, we can in fact revert this so that it is in its cannon mode for the robot mode of Nautilator. We can then collapse the head section down, and then what you're going to want to do here is bring these down and tab these tabs into these slots here. So snap that into place and then repeat the same process here. You're going to want to disengage these, open these up on both sides. And very similarly to golf, we're just going to want to collapse the legs and then tab that into place. All of these Seacons do have a rather similar transformation style. I do know that the majority of these, if not all of these, are in fact retools of previous figures from either the Combiner Wars or the Power of the Primes toy line. We can then lift this section up here, bring these arms down, and you're going to want to collapse those in, rotate the fists out, and repeat the same process here for this side, and just rotate that section out. And then here with the head, you're just going to want to bring this whole section back and until it tabs into place. And here we have Nautilator in his robot mode. So definitely a rather simplistic transformation from the lobster mode into the robot mode. As stated previously, I do believe that all of these figures are extensive retools of some of the Power of the Primes figures. You are definitely left with a rather cool looking robot mode though, and it definitely does follow the same aesthetic that we see with some of the other deluxe class Seacons. We do have the lobster head just hanging out on the back. However, considering that these things transform into sea creatures, I do think that it does blend in quite nicely to the sculpt. Something which I do think is quite ghastly is the way that these lobster legs just hang out to the back. Personally, I would think to collapse these in for robot mode. However, I do believe the instructions state that you should leave them out. But to me, I think that it just looks that slightly more cohesive if you do have them collapsed on the legs. And that goes for some of the other modes that we will in fact transform this figure into. He does have quite a nice looking head sculpt, very different from some of the other Seacons though, I must admit. And something which I have noticed is that his head is incredibly loose. It literally just swivels around and rattles around on an incredibly loose ball joint. There's really no tolerance to this at all. It's really the most loosest part of this figure, which is unfortunate. The arms are on ball joints so they can hinge out to the sides as well as lift up and down, and due to transformation they are on ratchet joints, so you can in fact lower the hinge or raise the hinge. There is ball joints at the elbows which allow you to move them forwards and backwards and swivel side to side. Full 360 rotation just where the waist cut is, as well as a ball joint at the legs, allowing the legs to move forwards and backwards as well as out to the side. Full 360 rotation on a mushroom peg, and then the knees can bend to 90 degrees. Nothing in terms of ankle rocker motion. So for a deluxe class, it is rather basic, much like we saw from some of those Power of the Primes figures. We can see here that I do have him wielding his axe weapon, which plugs into the hand quite nicely, as well as the end tow of the lobster mode, which transforms into a blaster. This is actually my favourite accessory that this figure does come with. I think that it looks really awesome on him. To me, it does almost appear as if though this entire grey area of the robot as well as the head looks completely different than the rest of the figure. I do wish that perhaps there were some of this aquamarine paint apps on the actual main torso and head section of the figure, as some of the other Seacons do have that type of paint variation, and here I honestly just think it looks as if though he's wearing armour, or that the entire torso and thigh areas are a completely different robot altogether. Now you can bring in the other accessory that we looked at earlier on, but once again I do believe that this is for the Piranhacon combined mode, so you can have him wielding this weapon if you so choose as well. So definitely quite a nice looking robot mode, and although he doesn't blend in as well as some of the other Seacons in terms of his colour variation, I still think that he is quite a nice figure. And for a Seacon size comparison, here we have Nautilator compared next to Sea-Wing and Scalor, as well as Snaptrap at the back. Personally, I think that these make for a great set. However, you can definitely see my complaints regarding the torso area being rather lackluster in terms of colour variation. Sea-Wing does have some of that aquamarine paint apps on his torso, as well as some nice blue plastic, whereas here with Nautilator, it does appear as if though the entire torso and thigh areas are just completely grey, and there really isn't no colour variation to them at all. Taking a look at this set as a whole so far, I do think perhaps Scalor could be my favourite. I know in my Sea-Wing review, I did say that he was edging towards being my favourite, but in terms of just a single robot mode, I really do think Scalor does a really good job of giving a sea creature a quite nice looking robot mode. Now to transform this figure into his arm configuration, once again it is fairly simplistic. You're just going to want to remove the accessories. We can come to the hands here and fold these back in so that we reveal the lobster claws, and then repeat the same process here for this side. Come to these legs here and just snap those together. give them a nice push and they will peg in quite nicely. Rotate the waist around so that you're left with this type of angle. We can then bring our attention to this section. My recommendation for getting the entire assembly of this aligned properly would be to hinge the hinge upwards, just so that you have the head exposed, so that you know roughly how the joint should go. I recommend that you should bring this section in and then tab that into place, and then you should be able to get full range of motion out of that hinge joint, and that's when you'll really know whether you're doing the transformation correctly. We can then rotate these sections here, and this slight slot will plug into this tab, so just align that appropriately and tab that into place, and repeat the same process here. Align this up and tab that into place. And I recommend folding these down. Once again, I think the instructions do actually tell you to fold these down for this particular mode. If you so choose, you could have these folded out. However, I think that it makes the whole sculpt look fairly coherent if you have them folded down. We can bring in the hand accessory and just port that into the base like so. And then if we turn our attention to our accessories, the instructions do state that you take this weapon and just port this into the top. And here we have Nautilator fully transformed into his arm configuration. A really nice, cool looking arm. Once again, it has got some nice articulation, such as double joints for the elbows, where the top of the legs are and where the knee joint is, so you do get quite a nice degree of motion. All of the fingers are individually articulated and you can rotate that 360. The ratchet joint too hinges quite nicely as well. And just quickly showcasing you how we attach Nautilator to Turtler or Snap Trap, you simply just push the huge post in and it will lock into place. And there we have Snap Trap or King Poseidon or Piranhacon with Nautilator as an arm. You can in fact see here that I do have Sea-Wing as a leg just for now, so that I've got some stability to the combined mode. However, when Tentakill comes out, this figure will be sure to be moved up to where the arm is. And here we've got Scalor in his proper configuration as well. So definitely a really nice looking combined mode. This figure is coming together really, really nicely. And I cannot wait to get the final two figures to complete our King Poseidon / Piranhacon combiner. Another thing that is worth mentioning is that utilising the accessories that have come with all of the Seacons that have been released so far, we more or less have half of the Piranhacon's trident. All we need now is another section of this and then this blade, and I do believe that it will be fully completed. It's definitely quite a large and substantial piece, and just bringing in Piranhacon, you can see here that it will definitely scale really nicely with this figure once it is in fact fully completed. I don't really know on how you're supposed to combine all of the weapons up. I do imagine that once we get the final two, there may be some instructions detailing that, but for now this is just my guesswork on how the trident is supposed to look, and so far I think it's looking really promising. Now, transforming Nautilator from his arm configuration into the leg configuration, believe it or not, is actually fairly straightforward. You're just going to want to rotate these pieces around here, and we can then open up these back sections, and it is literally just a case of collapsing these in. It's really simplistic to go from the arm configuration into the foot configuration. We can then take the weapon here, and you just want to lift this tab up so that we get some leverage to peg this blaster in, and then we can proceed to push it back down. Once again, you can fold these legs in or leave them out, and bringing in one of the pieces that we get with the Snap Trap figure and pegging those into the back. Here we have the leg configuration for Nautilator if you wish to display him in this mode, and we get full range of motion here for the leg. So definitely quite a cool figure. Once again, I'm a massive fan of how versatile these figures are as well, so that's also something quite cool to see. Now, he does also have a weapon mode. It's not something that I've really been paying too much attention to, but from what I can remember, you simply literally just peg that in, and then that is supposed to be the weapon mode. I do believe that it looks something along the lines of this. Maybe these are flared outwards to something like that. Once again, I'm only going to be leaving this figure in the arm configuration, so this really isn't a mode that really appeals to me too much. So that was my review on the Takara Tomy Transformers Generation Selects Nautilator, also known as Lobclaw. Personally, once again, I think that it's another great addition into this Seacon lineup, and we are one limb closer to fully completing the Piranhacon combined mode. This, to me, as I've stated in all of my previous reviews, is really where this set shines, as I think that this combiner looks completely different to anything that we've ever gotten before, and really stands out and looks incredibly impressive on a shelf. I'm a massive fan of these Decepticons that can convert into these almost sea-like creatures. I'm a really big fan of the overall concept. So to get this in a plastic form to me is something that I'm really happy about. I think that all of his modes are really well done, although I would like some colour variation within his robot mode. But saying that, I think that the lobster mode is definitely where it shines the most. He's one of the strongest Seacons in terms of his alt modes, and I think that he makes for a great arm for our King Poseidon / Piranacon combiner. I hope you enjoyed my review. If you did, please let me know down in the comment section below. I have done reviews on everything that you do in fact see here, so be sure to check out my Generation Selects Seacon playlist if you haven't watched or want to catch up with some of my other reviews on these figures. And until my next review, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.